Well, hey, thanks guys, Kevin, Mark, and Day Trading Zones for having us. This is Matt, and I'm here joined by the CEO of Easy Trading Computers, Eddie, and we just want to welcome everybody to the room, and thanks for having us in, right, Eddie?
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Mark, for having us. And we're ready to go, as long as you all can hear me.
Yeah, and just let us know if you can hear us by using the question box on GoToWebinar control panel. And that's a nice place to know about. I know many of you are used to Day Trading Zones webinars. Just to let you know how we'll do things in a second, I'll tell you what we're going to cover today. But as you think of any questions that you have, go ahead and enter them in the question box, and we'll have a Q&A time at the end. I will monitor throughout the webinar. So that'll work out nicely. And Nick says, yes, I can hear. Cindy, Bob, Harold, Manny, Russell, everybody's good to go. And let's talk about what we're going to go over today. And in today's webinar, we're actually going to cover a couple of topics. Number one is we'll talk a little bit about Windows XP and just how, well, I won't spoil the surprise, but let's talk about that. Eddie will go into great detail about that. And then I want to talk more, have Eddie talk more today about the biggest trading computer misconception. And we'll bring some light to that subject. And we'll also talk about, or Eddie will rather do a live demonstration right now in this webinar to know whether your computer will work for trading, whether you use the one you're on the webinar with now, or maybe you have a dedicated machine, and how do you know exactly whether it will work for trading. There is a systematic way that Eddie will outline. And then we'll also give you a minimum checklist for trading, both on the live webinar, and we'll show you how to get some resources that you can take with you today. So we are hopeful that you'll learn a lot today. We always have a lot of questions, more than we can take time to do, but we'll do our very best. And I think that what would be interesting to know, Eddie, first of all, not a lot of time, but just a little bit, why you're qualified to talk about this subject. And so how did you get started with computers?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I'm going to take you in a time machine back to 1980. I was 11 years old, and a buddy of mine, uh, he gets an Apple II computer, and he brings me over to his house after school one day to show me his Apple II computer. And it was, right in the beginning of the computer age. These were some of the first PCs that were ever created. And what he had done with this computer, all these words were scrolling across that green screen, and it was very busy, even though nobody was sitting at the machine. And what he had done is he had actually connected a very primitive modem to this computer. It was just a piece of rubber that had a telephone receiver plugged into these little cushions, and it was talking over the telephone to his computer. And people were calling in one by one and communicating with his computer. He had set something up called an electronic bulletin board, and this bulletin board was specifically for comic books. And people were posting messages about comic books. And I just thought this was the coolest thing in the world. It was like the predecessor of a website as we know it today. I thought this was the coolest thing in the world. So I began a campaign to my parents to get me a computer for the holidays. And if you look at the slide, that's what appeared under my tree, something called the Commodore VIC-20. And if you know anything about computers from this time, this particular machine was nothing like an Apple II. It was really a toy. Um, you loaded programs via a cassette player. The cassette player was actually the hard drive, and it would take forever for programs to load onto that computer. And I just did not understand what was wrong with this thing, like why it took so long for things to load. Why was it nothing like my friend's machine? So after my parents went to bed that holiday evening, I grabbed a screwdriver and pried the machine open to try to figure out what was going on with it. And that was the first time I ever took apart a computer, and that's where my lifelong passion for making these things stronger, faster, um, and just more awesome. That's where the passion was born, Matt, from that day.
It's a good story unless you're in your dad's shoes and you find your expensive Christmas gift taken apart. But we're all benefiting from that now. And your dad had another unique role that I think brings us here today, which is about Wall Street. And how did you personally get started on Wall Street?
Well, really, ever since I can remember, I was very fortunate. My father was a floor trader on the New York Mercantile Exchange, and honestly, from really the earliest time I can remember, my father would bring me to work with him, and I just loved going to work with him. We're talking about the early 70s. The floor was a place where men behaved badly, and the rules of being at home didn't apply there, and that's why I loved being there. And every time I had off from school, a couple times during the summer, my dad would take me to work with him. And when I became a teenager, I became very interested in what was going on down there. And my father actually taught me how to draw point and figure charts using a pencil and graph paper. And I became extremely interested in the markets. And as it turns out, the day after I finished high school, I graduated on a Friday, and Monday, that following Monday, I started on the floor, 17 years old, as a clerk. And I've been involved with Wall Street ever since. Every summer break, Christmas break, spring break, I worked on that floor. And when I finished school, instead of going down to the floor, I got sucked into the stock side of things, and I became a stockbroker. And I was a stockbroker through the 90s and early 2000s. And before I moved exclusively to trading my own money. So I have quite a few years on Wall Street. I definitely know what we go through as traders.
So you have these two worlds, and I think that's why we're here today, is you understand the tech side and also the Wall Street side. And how specifically did you get started building trading computers?
So the very first trading computer I built, I'm going to, again, back to the early 90s. When I first got my Series 7, I got put in this office. I worked for a little firm, and I was put in this office. It was like a big boardroom, and there was like maybe 20 guys in this boardroom in cubicles, and each guy had to share a machine with the guy next to him. So I show up my first day. The guy they put me next to, he's been there 3 or 4 years, and we're talking about a pretty old machine. It's, if you remember this particular picture, Bud Fox with his Quotrons, that was just a little bit before my time, but right after that, those, if you can imagine those screens with a black background and colored letters, he had commandeered, this guy next to me, he had commandeered about 90% of the symbols on the screen, and he left me like five slots for me to put symbols in. Now, I was pretty upset about this. I went into the branch manager. I explained to him that I could do surgery on this machine, add another monitor, and we could double the number of symbols we were looking at. And it took a little time, but I was able to convince him to allow me to do that. And that was the first trading computer that I built. As my career grew, I was always working on trying to build stronger, faster, more monitor-supported machines. And obviously the 90s was a great time to be a stockbroker. My career grew very rapidly. And so I was always building these machines, and parade of guys in the office come through and see me with the multiple old monitors. Remember these old monitors? I'd have 4 of them sitting on my desk, and they loved my setup, so I was always building machines for these guys all throughout the years. My father retired from the floor, and his peers all started trading from home, and I built workstations for them. Would build several a month, and then it wasn't really until recent years, and like say the last 5 years, when somebody drew me or brought me to a Google search of the term trading computers, and I saw what some of these other companies were doing, and it really bothered me watching what some of these other companies were doing in terms of taking advantage of traders' lack of knowledge in this area. So I've made it my mission over the years to educate traders on this technology in trader speak. I'm a trader like you, and I understand that as traders, we don't necessarily need to know what's going on under the hood, but we know we need a Mercedes or a Corvette-like computer to trade in this market. So that's how the whole trading computer world came together for me, Matt.
So I think that helps just talk about, how you can speak that trader speak, but also the tech speak. And speaking of tech speak, there's something I want to cover just real fast, not a lot of time, because I want you to get into your demonstration today so that people can walk away with it. But Eddie, there was one thing that happened this year, and we know from our website analytics who does and doesn't have this operating system, which is Windows XP, and why. Just quickly, why should traders worry about this? And we'll move on to the demo from here.
Sure, sure. So there's a couple of big reasons that you need to be careful if you're still using a computer with Windows XP. Even looking at some of the recent analytics, we're still seeing like 35% or more of the visitors to our websites are still using XP, and that's a really big no-no. You're in a red zone right now, because back in April, Microsoft discontinued support on Windows XP. And the biggest part of discontinuing support is discontinuing writing security patches for Windows XP. Now, at first, it probably doesn't seem like a big deal, and you might not take this warning seriously, especially because Microsoft's integrity these days isn't what it used to be. So I realize there are people out there who are not taking this warning seriously, but there are a couple of very big issues. The first thing is if hackers are able to exploit holes in your security, you are very open to malware, viruses, and even identity theft. Okay? It's a really big deal. Now, here's why. All of the operating systems that they've come out with, Windows XP, Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, they're all written in a very similar architecture, a very similar type of source code. So when new security patches come out for the later operating systems, Vista 7 and 8, hackers can actually take those security patches, those updates, reverse engineer them, and potentially find and exploit a problem with Windows XP. They could find a similar hole in Windows XP. So what's going to happen as time goes on and Windows issues more security patches for those later operating systems is Windows XP is going to become even more vulnerable. So please, if you're using Windows XP now, most likely it means you're using a machine that's at least 5 years old, which by itself is a little bit of a red flag. And it's going to become more and more dangerous. So just want to put that out there. It is a bigger deal than it may seem on the surface.
Yeah, so thanks for covering that really quick. And beyond just having XP, there's also the computer side, the hardware side, which is what we want to spend most of our time talking about today. And probably the biggest question that we hear all the time, and many of the large room we have here today are going to ask, why are trading computers needed?
Right. What's so special about a trading computer? Like, why is it different than an off-the-shelf computer at Best Buy? And it's a good question. I get that question every day. And what it really brings us to, what it boils down to, is what I call the trader's biggest misconception. And what that misconception is not realizing the sheer level of real-time data, the sheer quantity of real-time data that's pouring into your machine that your processor has to take in and turn into real-time charts, real-time prices, all your indicators, and show that data to you and those lines to you and those charts to you spot on real time. Spot on real time. Now let me give you an example. You see this picture here? Does this look familiar? You go to Netflix to load up a movie. you go to YouTube, or you go somewhere, download something visual, and you get this little buffering indicator. You know, years ago, took a lot longer than it does today. The time definitely has decreased. But here's the thing. What your computer is actually doing when it's buffering is it's taking in a giant stream of information. And it's taking that information and it's turning it in, let's use the Netflix example, it's turning it into a high definition movie. So it takes in a whole bunch of that stream and then works to turn it into that nice high definition movie that you see. And the buffering gives it a chance to process all that information as the stream is coming in. But think of it in a trading perspective. You're taking in this giant stream of real-time data, all the volume, all the information that's needed for what you're trading, and you don't have time to buffer it. That data, your computer's got to turn it into those charts and indicators instantly, in real time. If your processor of your computer or just the other hardware of your computer, your internet, things like that, are not up to speed, if they're not at the fastest settings and the highest level of technology that you can have, you open yourself up to that data being slightly stale, meaning by the time you see it hit your screen, hit your charts, hit your prices, it's a fraction of a second to several seconds slow. Matt, can you go back for a second? It's several seconds it's several seconds behind. It can happen, even if it's a fraction of a second. So you potentially are making decisions based on prices that are slightly old, slightly stale. But let me give you another example. Imagine you're at a sports bar, and I'm sure you've seen this. I want you to think about this. You walk into a sports bar, there's a big game playing on all the screens. It's like Super Bowl Sunday, or it's NFL Sunday, or wherever you are in the world, it's the World Cup, and they have an HD TV, or mostly HD TVs, but a lot of these bars, they still have some of those old analog TVs. Have you ever seen the same game on an HD TV also playing on an analog TV? Have you ever seen a little time delay between the two games? This is a picture I actually grabbed off of Google. If you look on the left, guy's actually going up for a layup or a dunk or something, and the guy over on the right is already into his shooting position. And this is the same game, the exact same game. This is what I'm talking about, where the HD TV and the analog TV have a slight time delay. That's what happens to your trading data. That's what happens to that real-time data flow if your computer can't process that avalanche, that waterfall of real-time data coming in. Now, what happens if your data is a fraction of a second too slow and you put in a market order? You wind up getting filled at a price you totally did not expect. Have you ever had that happen to you? It's an awful feeling. You expected to pay a certain price and suddenly you paid a lot more for it. That's called slippage. And slippage is the biggest enemy of day traders and swing traders. Absolutely the biggest enemy. So that is the trader's biggest misconception, Matt, the risk of slippage by having a computer that can't handle that super level of real-time data we have coming into our computers today.
Okay, so now I think what would make sense that we've talked about that is if I could pass over control to you, Eddie, and you could walk through a live demonstration on how each of us could individually determine if our current computers will work for trading.
Absolutely. So if you can do that now, I will give a demo.
All right, the steering wheel should be coming over to you.
All right, so you guys should see my screen, which shows Google. Do you see that, Matt?
Yep, we got Google. No fancy logos today.
No fancy logos on Google today. So first thing you want to do, and you guys can try to do this in real time. In fact, I recommend you do. I'll go over it a few times. The first thing we want to do is determine the engine of our computer. What engine do we have under the hood? Because our engine, also called the processor, is the most important component for our trading computer. Absolutely the most important speed component. It's the one, the processor does all the work in taking that real-time data feed and starting and turning it into real-time charts and graphs. So this is how you find out what processor is in your computer. You click Start button, and then you right-click Computer. Now, if you're still in Windows XP, it's going to say, instead of saying Start, I apologize, that window popped up on another monitor. I do run multiple monitors. But this is what the window looks like in 7 and 8. And in XP, you would click Start, and it would say My Computer. You right-click, then click Properties. So again, it's Start, right-click Computer, then click Properties. And this window will come up. In Windows XP, you might see a smaller window, and you want to click on the General tab. And then you'll get the same information as what's on this particular window. So the information we're looking for is the processor. We're actually going to grab 3 pieces of information. First is the processor. Now, in my case, I have the Intel Core i7-4930K processor. Now, you want to jot that down, what processor you have. So you want the name of the manufacturer. It's either going to be AMD or Intel, and you want the numbers that follow. So I have the i7-4930K processor. So you want to jot that down, and you also want to check out how much memory you have. I have 32 gigs of RAM, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and then also note I'm running Windows 7 Professional on this particular machine. All right, so now we know what processor we have, how much RAM, and what operating system we're using. So then we're going to use our good old friend, the internet, Google, our buddy Google. We're going to go to a website. We're going to go to a website called CPUbenchmark.net. CPUbenchmark.net. Go ahead to that website, and it looks like this. When the website loads, there's a drop-down on the right side. It says Select a Page. Just hover over it, and then scroll down to the page that's called the Searchable CPU List. Searchable CPU List. Now, I know this particular site, they've been working on it for a while, and there is some messed up code at the top. Just ignore that. It's not relevant. But this is what this page looks like. Now, what this site is, what this company is a company that's written software that people from all over the world have downloaded and installed on their computers. And what it does is it forces people's computers to solve a whole series of formulas and algorithms, and then the software measures how fast it comes up with the solutions. Now, the great thing about it is you don't have to run this software, because the software sends the results back to this database. So literally thousands and thousands of people have already tested your processor, and it comes up with something called a benchmark score. A benchmark score. Now, here's how you find your benchmark score. You want to go down, you see this Find CPU button, there's a box here, and you want to put in your processor. If you remember, I have the i7-4930K. Now you see it starts to autofill just underneath, like it's already looking in the database. Now you do want to make sure you have all the numbers and letters of your processor, because you see there's a 4930MX. That's not the one. So I have the 4930K, and I'll just use the cursor to click on that to make sure I have the exact right processor. And then I'm going to click Find CPU. Click Find CPU, and that takes me down to my exact processor and my benchmark score, which in my case is this number here, 13,204 is my benchmark score. Now, what does that mean, 13,204? Because you have no point of reference. Well, I'm going to give you the point of reference right now. The higher the number, the faster your processor. The minimum benchmark score for traders is 7,500. 7,500. If you have a score less than 7,500, you are at risk of slippage. The lower the number, the worse the situation is for you. And it is a big deal. If you come up with a number like 1,500, you're really in a major red zone. Major red zone. So 7,500 is that minimum benchmark score. And that's the biggest piece of the puzzle for having a super fast trading computer. The next biggest piece of the puzzle is your internet speed. And in my opinion, the best place to measure your internet speed is a website called speedtest.net. Speedtest.net. You go to that site. Don't click on anything yet. There's a lot of advertising on that site, so just be careful of that. I have the advertising blocked out on my machine, so you don't see it in my demo. You want to wait for this big green pill button to show up that says Begin Test. So I'm going to go ahead and begin the test, and I'll explain. What this site does, in my opinion, I think this is the best site. You guys may know of other speed sites, but this one's the best. It tests three different things. Number one, it tests something called your ping. Your ping is actually your modem sending a signal out to your biggest major node and getting an echo back. An echo back. And in my case, that is 9 milliseconds. The minimum ping for trading is below 75 milliseconds. That's above that, you start to get into a danger zone. The next download speed happens to be 121 megabits per second, which is a nice big number. But the minimum for traders is 5 megabits per second. 5 megabits per second. The higher the number, the better. And then the upload speed, you want a minimum of 1 megabit per second. Again, the higher the number, the better. Now, by the way, before we go on any further, two things. One, we're about to put up a checklist to show you everything, these numbers again, so you can see them in writing. And number two, everything we talk about today is available in our buyer's guide. I'm going to show you where you can get that buyer's guide in a few minutes. So, Matt, maybe you want to take back controls, and we can go over the checklist real fast and add a couple of things to the puzzle. You with me, Matt? All right.
Sorry, just unmuting, but you should be able to see the checklist now.
Yes, very good. So again, the benchmark score is 7,500 or higher, and that comes from that website, cpubenchmark.net. The internet speed, you want a ping less than 50 milliseconds. You want a download speed greater than 5 megabits per second. Upload speed greater than 1 megabit per second. And the next important piece of the puzzle, again, the processor is the most important part, and then secondarily, your internet speed is super important. Next is the amount of RAM you have installed. 8 gigabytes is really the minimum for traders these days. Absolute minimum for traders. It used to be just 4, but as trading platforms have become more robust, as we tend to multitask and run multiple applications simultaneously, for example, GoToWebinar while we're trading, or some other major application, or multiple trading platforms, there becomes a need for more and more RAM. And you really want to have overhead. You want, even if you're only using 3 or 4 at any given time, you want to make sure you got enough clear space, because if the market starts really jamming, for example, we have a flash crash or a news event that makes the market just gyrate, it's going to start to demand more RAM. And if you run out of RAM, your computer is going to start using the hard drive for memory, and essentially it's going to lock up the whole thing. So it's a big deal. At least 8 gigs of RAM. And then we talked a little bit about this already, but something called your operating system. Windows XP we talked about is a no-no. So we want at least Windows 7. And I prefer Windows 7 still to this day. 8 works. 8.1 works. People just tend to not like the interface. Windows 8 is not a huge improvement in terms of speed, and it is a big disappointment in terms of the user interface. People just don't like it. But we do sell computers with Windows 7 or 8. It's totally the trader's decision on that one. And with that, Matt, why don't we tell people where we can get the buyer's guide?
Yeah, let's do that, because a lot of what you've talked about, I know there's Marilyn, Chow, several people just mentioned, hey, I really liked what you outlined. Where do I go get it? And this would be the link. And would you like to show people how this works?
Yeah, go ahead and pass me the controls back.
Sure, I'll send it back. It's nice that we can toss the steering wheel around here.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll just do that. And then I will, looks like Kevin already put the link for you guys in GoToWebinar.
So it's realtraderswebinar.com /easy trading.
Easy trading.
Just let that page load up there. And there's our guide to trading computers. Just go ahead and enter your email address.
Now, Eddie, a lot of what you talked about is in that guide.
There's actually a lot more than we have time for today. It's trader speak, how to set up a great trading computer. It goes into a lot more detail than what we had time for today. So once you put your email address in, the guide will be sent to you via email instantaneously. And definitely check out the videos. I think you'll enjoy them a lot. Now, the guys over at Day Trading Zones, they wanted me to put together a special deal for you. So we did put together a special deal for you guys. We have a special going right now on our Apache GT, what's called our Apache GT. And just thinking back to our webinar, this particular computer has the Intel Core i7-4790. The benchmark on this one is 10,400. 10,400. So far exceeds the benchmark score minimum requirements for traders. Number 2, it comes with a giant amount of RAM, 16 gigs of RAM. It also comes with something called a solid-state hard drive. If you've never heard of that before, I want you to think about your iPhone or even your iPod if you still use one. Have you ever tried to pull up a song or a saved file on your iPhone or your iPod? It comes up nearly instantaneously. That's because this device has something called a flash memory chip built into it. And it's a chip. All your information is stored on a chip. It's very different than the storage you probably have on your computer now, which is a standard hard drive, a 30-year-old technology. So the old hard drives that you have now in your computer actually have a spinning disk inside. It has moving parts. Those parts can wear out with time. If you've ever had a hard drive go bad, you know what I'm talking about. And they tend to be very slow when compared with their flash memory chip version of hard drive. So what a solid-state hard drive is actually a whole series of these chips designed to be your main storage unit. That's where all your programs are stored. The beauty of it is that it's 7 times faster than a standard old hard drive. and the reliability, because there's no moving parts, is much, much higher. Super low failure rate. So it just big improvement in trader experience, user experience. This particular package you can get with the computer by itself if you already have monitors, or with 3 monitors. It will support 3 monitors right out of the gate. Comes with a 5-year warranty, comes with lifetime technical support. We also have some other cool bonuses for traders that are included with this deal. We have financing, installment payments, or 0% for 90 days. So you might want to check those out at your leisure. We have some deals where you can get your computer for free if you open a new account with TradeStation or with FXCM. Check those out at your leisure. Bookmark this page. Matt, why don't we just go ahead and open it up to questions? I'm sure you guys have all kinds of questions, and I'm not really a good sales guy, so why don't I just answer questions?
Yeah, and I know what people love when you do that, and without even prompting, there's already many questions, and this is a great room. There's a lot of great questions. We want to get to them. Just
Awesome.
going back very quickly on the Apache GT, what operating system does it include? There was a question from Lawrence on that.
It includes Windows 7 64-bit. You can have Windows 8. You just have to request it. It's the exact same price. But by default, we install Windows 7 64-bit Home Premium.
I love when we do these webinars, and it sounds like I'm going to go into a marketing speak here, but this is just what came up. Tyra said here in the room today she just bought a computer from us and was setting it up today. Ninja Chart's loaded. TradeStation's working now. It's wonderful so far. Thanks.
Oh, thanks so much. You know, this isn't the first time that's happened to us.
No,
I think
not at all.
not planned. That was not planned.
Going back in operating system land a little bit, and Johnny asks, what about Vista from Windows? Should he use that for trading?
So Vista, if you remember when Vista very first came out, it was a bit of a disaster. It had some real user problems. They did try to work those out, but at that time, it was a disaster for Microsoft, just kind of like when Windows 8 came out recently. I don't know why they keep doing this. But as long as you have the 64-bit version, it needs to be the 64-bit version, and it will tell you on that screen. You can just ignore my chat if it pops up. It will tell you if you click Start and you right-click Computer and you click Properties, it'll tell you in this area over here if it's 32-bit or 64-bit. 64-bit is essential because 32-bit will only recognize about 3.1 gigs of RAM. That is a big problem. Number 2 is, without going into a deep technological explanation, is it creates a lot of bottlenecks. You need to have a 64-bit version. Now, Vista's pretty old already, so it probably is reflective of what computer you're using. And if I had to guess, your computer's probably 4 to 7 years old, and it might be time to upgrade just based on benchmark score. So just give that some thought.
You know, Eddie, whenever you say upgrade, of course, because you own a computer company, it sounds like a pitch, but then, and people say, no, and then they upgrade later and they call back and say, I don't know what I was doing before. I was making coffee while the thing boots up and just waiting for it to process. It's a whole different experience, isn't it?
It's a whole different experience. With that solid state hard drive, your computer boots up in under 40 seconds. So in the morning when you turn your computer on, if it's taking you 2, 3, 4 minutes just to get to the desktop, that is a problem. Something's up. Your drives are slow. Your operating system is slow. Probably most everything you do, you don't even realize it because it's just always been that way. So it's hard for you to even recognize there's a problem.
Right. Chung asks, what does he need to do to connect 4 monitors to his computer?
That's a good question. So generally speaking, to get 4 monitor support or more, you need video cards. Now, the least expensive way to do that is to get multiple video cards, but you have to know if your motherboard will support multiple video cards. There are video cards that support 4 monitors, but again, you need to know if your motherboard will support that video card. You are welcome to call us. We can help you research this. You can see in the little chat box below our phone number, 800-387-5250. We can help you determine if your motherboard is suitable for that. And any questions you have, by the way.
Okay, so then Arturo asks, along with a few other people that are coming in now, about iMac or Mac users, Apple users. He even mentions he has an Intel Core 2 Duo with 3.06 gigahertz processor. So it seems like it'll work, but what do you say?
Well, there's a couple of issues with our buddies over at Apple, and you know, I realize people love their Apple products. Stock went up on earnings today. If you guys trade stocks, the stock has been doing pretty well. Has a good cult following, but our buddy Steve Jobs, if you've ever seen the movie or read the book, you know he kind of ruled with an iron fist, and it was his decision and his idea to be in control of the hardware and all of the software. He never wanted his ability to access the source code be given out to developers in an easy way. And because of that, virtually no trading software has been written specifically for the Apple operating system. And this is a big problem. So what people who try to trade with an Apple do is they try to load essentially what is a hack of Windows onto their Apple computers in the form of bootleg, what's it called? Bootleg, Matt? Boot something.
I don't even remember.
Parallels or I forget. It's something with a boot.
Oh, Boot Camp.
That's it. That's it. And what happens is that once you're running Boot Camp or once you're running the parallel installation and then you try to load up one of these trading applications, you've used up all of that Apple's resources, and it's really hard to make it run right. It'll work, but you're going to have slippage because your processor is just running at 100%. That's like getting in your car, putting it in neutral, and pushing that gas pedal all the way to the floor and holding it there. It just can't maintain that, and it's a problem. And that's why people who use Macs, you know, I get it. We have a lot of customers who use Mac for their day-to-day stuff, just surfing the web, Facebook, email, because they like the interface and they're used to it. And then they get a PC for trading because it's, number one, it's a lot cheaper than a Mac is, and number two, you get a way more processing power. And everything's designed for it. So you can thank our buddy Steve Jobs. That was his idea, and it really hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed.
We have a lot of people who have given us the honor tonight and today of being on the webinar, and they're from all over the world. Brian and Elizabeth were asking if you ship internationally. Brian specifically about the UK. I've been asked about Sweden. Could you talk about that for a sec?
Sure. We do ship internationally. In fact, we ship all over the world. There's a page up here. If you guys are still on this page, you'll see it says international terms right here. Just want to check that out. In general, it's about $289 to ship anywhere in the world. You do want to check your local laws regarding import duties. So in some places, unfortunately, like the EU, they tack on the value-added tax, and our buddies over at FedEx will actually collect that. They hold the computer ransom until you pay that. So that is a little bit of a problem for people in the EU, but we do ship there all the time. Australia, we ship quite a few. It amazes me how many traders are in Australia. Canada, we've shipped to Dubai, we've shipped to Bahrain, we've shipped places I've never heard of before. We've shipped pretty much everywhere in the world. Nigeria. So we're happy to do that for you.
So Paul and Heng were asking, can you upgrade to 5 or 6 monitors? And also Heng clarified, He was wondering if you can support the newer 4000 resolution Ultra Day HD monitors.
Okay, so those are two questions. And yes, this model can be upgraded to support 6 monitors. The price to support 6 monitors, the computer is $14.99 with 3 monitor support, $14.99 if you want 4, and $15.99 if you want 6 monitor support. So we can add that. You just need to call in to order it. It would be a little hard to order off this page because we don't have those as options that you can just order online. So please call in if that's something you're interested in. And what was the second part?
Oh,
The
asking.
4,000,
Mm-hmm.
the 4,000
Yeah.
resolution. Yes, we can support those without issue. Do mention to whoever you talk to that you want to do that, so we make sure we set it up for that.
Mm-hmm. We can do a lot of things. You just have to, we try to walk through, don't you? Try to walk through what people are doing, what they're trying to accomplish, and whether it's a good fit, right?
Yeah, exactly. We want to make sure we set these up for exactly as what you need, just what you need. There's no reason to buy bells and whistles, things you don't need. And that's what a lot of these other guys do, is they try to sell you a bunch of stuff you don't need. I'm a trader too, and you know, I'll just use, I like to use the car analogy a lot because I have a heavy foot behind the wheel. I guess I would probably bet a lot of traders do. And I like to drive fast, and I like having a fast car. And I mentally understand what's going on under the hood, but I'm not really big on opening the hood to really figure it out and take it apart. I do that with computers, but so I kind of, from that point of view, I understand traders want something super fast, super reliable. That's like the biggest thing. You want reliability and fast, but you don't necessarily need to know all the details, and we get that. So yes, I might have given you a lot of technology on this call today. We get that you don't need all that tech speak, and we're not going to baffle you with a bunch of BS.
Rob asks, do different platforms for trading have different requirements, say TradeStation versus Thinkorswim?
Correct. So yes, that's absolutely true. So for example, TradeStation is currently a 32-bit program, although they're beta testing version 9.5, which will actually finally start using multi-core, multi-threads on almost the entire program, which is a really big deal, especially on their back testing modules. So they're finally jumping ahead. Thinkorswim is already 64-bit and runs very well on our machines. NinjaTrader, if you guys use NinjaTrader, it's not the fastest platform out there. I hope they don't hear me saying that, but a lot of people use it, and please tell us so we can set the computer up to be optimized for NinjaTrader. But overall, I don't know of any specific platform that is a super problem. I mean, I think those are the big ones. Interactive Brokers works very well. Options Express, Options Monster. There's dozens of them.
So David has a question that's a little more technical, so I apologize if some people aren't interested, but he was just asking about RAM speed, and he found that can have a big impact on performance. Is that true?
It can in some cases. We use 1600 megahertz RAM in our computers until you get to the higher end ones, but I mean, I'm not in total agreement with that statement. I mean, the difference between the megahertz speed can be measured in nanoseconds, like 1 or 2 nanoseconds for certain operations, which is billionths of a second, and is not really noticeable to the human eye. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I think we get a lot of questions that are, you know, I heard or I overheard or my cousin's uncle's brother told me. And the fact is, your computers are built in such a way that the most important things, we went over them today in the webinar,
Yeah,
are covered. Mm-hmm.
optimized for trading. The
Exactly.
processor, your internet speed, your hard drive speed. I mean, those are the biggies.
The
And if
biggies.
you
Mm-hmm.
let's
You
keep
were
going. We
saying?
have more
Yeah,
questions.
we do. And you were talking earlier just about, asking customers as they call in, what are they doing? And Mark had asked, do you load software on your computers? Can you load whatever people need as they might have custom requirements?
We can load some applications. So generally we load Windows, we load antivirus software, we include that. We put on our remote diagnostic software, so should you need to call our tech support, which by the way is for the lifetime of the machine, the software will generate a password. You give it to the technician, they can log in and see what's going on and where you got stuck. Um, and we'll put a couple of other little programs that are helpful to you, like Malwarebytes and another one called CCleaner, just so you have some utility programs there, and that's it. No bloatware, no junk. If you require certain applications that are free and easily accessible, we can accommodate you. We do not install trading applications because almost all of them you need your username and password to do that. Um, we can help you in some cases optimize once you've got it installed, but unfortunately there's some licensing issues with us doing that, so we don't do that specifically.
Carlos pointed out that when he did the CPU benchmark today with us on the demonstration, he found that his score is 2348. Is he in trouble?
Yes, yikes. His computer may be fully functional. Everything loads up. Things appear to be normal because it's been functioning well for some time. But if it's definitely possible his processor can become overburdened by a sudden change in market activity, be it a economic report, for example, CPI comes out at 10 o'clock Eastern time, or some of those other numbers that are released while the market's open, that can really throw some knee-jerk reactions into the market and stress out your processor. God forbid some type of tragedy that happens during market hours. I say a flash crash because, as much as I wish we can rule that out from ever happening again, it could happen. There are a lot of this. That's a whole nother discussion, but it could happen again. So you need to be prepared for these kinds of things. And until you use a new computer, you probably have no idea how slow you actually are.
So then the next question was from RTW, and he was asking about the Apache. Is that 4790 i7, is that coming in overclocked?
No, it is not. That is the speed of the i7 4790 in its what's called Turbo Boost mode. Turbo Boost is actually built onto the processor by Intel. It's fully automated, needs no additional programming from us or from you. When the computer reaches a certain point, and normally the processor runs at 3.5 gigahertz, but when extra demand is placed on that processor, it will jump up to 4 gigahertz. That is not overclocked.
All right. Now, Ed had heard that there were downsides to solid-state drives, like a shorter lifespan, anything like that. Or what are your thoughts in response to that?
The shorter lifespan, so in theory, well, actually in reality, there are only so many times a solid-state drive can be written to. It has a finite limit number of times it can be written to. However, unless you're managing Walmart's inventory, you're never going to come anywhere near that limit. So you're not reading and writing and writing and writing and writing all the time. You're not downloading music and erasing it and putting other music on and doing that hundreds of times a day. Think about the servers that have to, just in one Walmart store, every time somebody scans something, it's reading and writing onto a drive somewhere. That's why I mentioned Walmart. You're not doing that as a trader. In fact, you're writing very little. You download the programs you use. When you turn on your trading applications during the day, we'll just use TradeStation as an example, TradeStation loads up, puts all of that code into random access memory, into RAM, and it runs that program with going back and forth between the RAM. Very few times is it actually going to write any information to the hard drive. So if you're a person who does download tons of movies and tons of music and you're constantly erasing, I would recommend just getting another drive. We can put in a secondary drive, a 1 terabyte standard drive for that, but you're never, ever, ever going to come near the write limit of these solid state drives.
We, well, maybe it was a seller of those older drives and they were shipping them from China and just made up this rumor to get everybody concerned. But that's the point, is there's a lot of things to be concerned with if you try to whittle it down to what's easy. And speaking of concerns, Chunga just brought up the idea of support and warranty, and we're out of time, so could you just go over that, what we support, our warranty?
Yeah, absolutely. So we support for full 5 years everything that's inside this computer case. Every component inside this computer we warranty for a full 5 years. Our tech support line is open to you for the lifetime of the machine. So if you're still using this computer 7 years down the road and you get your computer's frozen, we will still help you over the phone. So lifetime tech support and a 5-year warranty. That's what we offer on our computers. How it works is pretty simple. Let's say, for example, the CD drive isn't opening. By the way, this does come with a CD and DVD writer and reader. Let's say the door isn't opening for some reason. It happens from time to time, pretty rare, but it can happen. You call our tech line. We will help you diagnose the problem. If it's something that we can walk you through over the phone, it is possible that just the connection in the back came loose, and we'll walk you through a couple of diagnostics. If it's a situation where it's actually dead for some reason, we will ship you a new drive, walk you through the install over the phone so you don't have any downtime. So that's what we do. We do our best to cover you with the least amount of downtime for a full 5 years. And my guys are American. They speak English just like me and you. They don't know much about trading, but man, do they know about computers. That's all they do, is build these machines every day.
Well, it is the end of our webinar here, and I noticed there's some questions about FXCM, opening account with them, or TradeStation, or if people have any questions at all, what should they do?
They should call us at our 800 number. The number is here at the top right of the website, or here in the chat box. It's always here in this little bubble. Call us. If you open up the chat and we're not available and you type a message in here, we'll email one of us. So please feel free to contact us for any technology trading related question at all. We're always happy to help. Our goal is to have you guys have your computers be really in the right place for trading, because you know what? Trading is not that easy just by itself. And you need to eliminate any little thing that can aggravate you while you're trading. Anything that can set you off while trading, like a computer glitch, is really a problem. You need to trade in a Zen-like space. I know, I'm a day trader myself. You need to keep your mind in a Zen-like space while you're trading, because if you get really irritated at a bad trade, and then you get irritated because your computer's locking up for some reason, it just sets off this cascade effect of what we call your fight or flight response, your brain's response to being triggered. And what happens is you wind up making a series of bad decisions in a row. It just happens. So if you want to keep your mind in a Zen-like space, you really need to make sure your computer's up to speed for trading. So thanks everybody for showing up.
Yeah, and on that note, we do appreciate it, and I think Kevin will walk us out here.
All right, first off, guys, we just want to say to Eddie and Matt, guys, thank you so much for such an excellent presentation. I know I learned a ton of stuff about computers, RAMs, and CPUs. And I just wanted to mention real quick also how we were introduced to Easy Trading Computers, why we wanted to invite you guys in. All of you know Mark Nicholas from Day Trading Zones, and Mark actually bought his whole setup that every time he does a presentation, the 4 monitor setup, he shows the picture of his setup. Actually, I think he might even be going upgrading to the 6, but he got that from Easy Trading Computers. That's where he got his setup, and he was so blown away by how great everything was, the service when he got it, and everything was put together. He was just blown away. So that's why we wanted to invite Eddie and Matt in to share everything they did with you guys. So thank you guys again for coming in, and we can't give you more of a recommendation for checking out Easy Trading Computers. So, guys, thanks again. And for everybody that came in tonight, thank you for spending your Wednesday afternoon with us. Next week, we'll continue to do our webinars at 8 p.m. on Thursday nights. So thanks again for coming in. Thank you, Eddie and Matt. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, and if you guys are still there, just one last thing. Make sure you go over to railtraderswebinar.com/easytrading.